Because then my role is to support him to fully embody and claim and step into his masculine. And he can't do that if I keep taking on that role for him. Hi everyone, welcome to the Lead from Love podcast. I am Yalini, I am your host and love coach. Now, today's episode, we're going to talk about the difference between masculine and feminine energies and what that means when it comes to love and dating. Now, this is a huge topic. There are so many layers to it. I can't even cover it in a whole hour with my clients, let alone one episode. So I'm going to break it down in two parts for you. This episode is part 1. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of masculine and feminine energies and then explain the role of the masculine when it comes to leading, specifically with protecting and providing. I'm also going to explain how that impacts the feminine and what that requires of her, because she doesn't just sit back and relax. There's a really interesting dynamic here that's important to get right in your love life. Otherwise, things can just fall flat real fast before they even have a chance to take off. So to explore that deeper, I'm going to look at the obstacles that hold us back from showing up fully in this space and what you can do to overcome them. Then in part 2, which will be the next episode, I'm going to unpack the role of the feminine when it comes to receiving and being vulnerable and how that impacts the masculine, what it requires of him. Because this can be a real trigger for both of them, especially when it comes to love and connecting on that deeper level. Now, there are so many more layers to it on top of this, but these are the ones that I'm focusing on because they give you the right foundation to build on. And you know what, to make it fun, I'm going to explain these energy dynamics in the context of the tango, which is a dance I've started recently doing and learning. And it works as a great metaphor to explore the masculine and feminine energies. Because just like the tango, finding balance between the masculine and feminine is a dance. And when you get it right, you can have that spark and passion that most of us want. Otherwise, it just kind of fizzles and falls flat. So as we jump in, the first thing I want to do is just clarify that these energies have nothing to do with gender. We all have masculine and feminine energies as part of who we are. We're just naturally more one than the other. And for the purpose of making this simple and easy to follow, I'm going to talk about the masculine in men and the feminine in women, so you understand how that plays out in a relationship and dating dynamic. Because when you think about the masculine man, he is normally strong and decisive and he feels powerful. Because the masculine energy is all about assertiveness. It's logic and strength and action. It's all about doing and thinking your way through things, whether, it be a project at work or building something at home. Because the masculine man, he wants to get out there. He wants to get things done and tick things off his list, because that sense of accomplishment, that is what makes him feel good. And in contrast, when you think about the feminine woman, she's normally gentle, but not in a weak way, in the sense that, she's kind and warm and just magnetic. You want to be near her because she feels loving. And that's because the feminine energy, that is all about nurturing. She wants to connect emotionally. She is sensual, intuitive. She craves to be seen and held. And when it comes to love, the masculine energy is the leader. He provides and he protects. And the feminine receives or follows. She brings vulnerability and heart to the connection. So these are the elements I'm going to focus on, because even though there's more to it, like I mentioned before, these are the fundamental ones. They're the building blocks for the relationship. And balance between these areas are important because they bring harmony to a relationship so that you're not stuck. So for this part 1, I'm going to look at leadership, which is the masculine energy, and what this has to do with providing and protecting. Because look, for a potent relationship, you need a strong leader to drive things, to take action, to make things happen. Otherwise, you're just left standing there. Nothing really happens. That's why when it comes to the tango, there's always a leader. And ladies, there can only be one. Otherwise, you'll be stepping on each other's toes. So having one strong leader, that gives direction, not just for the dance, but for the couple. So let me give you an example. This is how it played out in my love life. Being a decisive leader, oh my gosh, that's how my ex got me into a relationship in 3 weeks. And I'm not someone who jumps into a relationship. But he knew what he wanted and he went for it. And because he showed up in that way, I've got to say, it was the easiest dating experience I have ever had. There were no games, no confusion. I knew who he was, what he wanted, where I stood with him, and where we were going. And it was just simple. You know, if he wanted to message, he messaged. If he wanted to call, he called. If he wanted to see me, he told me when and where. And not in a controlling way, but in a strong leadership way where he knew how to drive the connection. And that is a potent masculine energy, to lead with conviction and with certainty. And here's what that means for the feminine in terms of providing and protecting. Because look, a leader provides clarity and stability for the connection. And for the feminine, that just feels like such a relief. It really does. It takes away the anxiety from that new romance, you know, when you're unsure of what's going on and what his intentions are and if you're going to hear from him. So the way that he showed up, that was everything that my feminine wanted. It just gave me peace inside. Because with him, there was nothing I needed to worry about. There was nothing I needed to do. He took care of it. And that strong leadership, that offers a sense of protection. That helps the feminine in me feel safe to let my walls come down. Because he gave me the sense that, you know, he's got this. He's got me. I don't have to protect myself. I am taken care of. And when there's a clear polarity, when there is a clear leader and follower, and you allow each other to do your roles properly, because I was resisting his lead, that's when dating can feel really easy. But here's where the work is, because I know it sounds easier, right? As the feminine, you just lean back and you follow. But I was able to follow him because now I find the quality of a strong masculine lead attractive. But in the past, I would have found that intimidating. I would have seen a man like that and felt like, I don't know if I can compete with him. Can I meet him at that level? I don't know. He's so decisive and he knows where he's going and he shows up in this way. Am I doing the same things? Am I as decisive? Am I showing up in the same way? But now I know better, right? Because like the tango, there's only one leader. So I'm not competing with him for that position, because we each bring in our own unique set of skills and qualities. And he's the masculine lead. So my role is really about leaning back into the fullness of my feminine essence. But by leaning back, what ends up happening is it brings up a whole set of other issues. So how that played out is, for me, when it came time to make it official, I freaked out. I freaked out because it was so fast. It had only been 3 weeks. But the truth was, it's not like I didn't know him, because sure, even though it was only 3 weeks, we actually spent quite a bit of time together, whether it was on the phone or whether it was in person. And when you've got a man in front of you that has a clear plan and vision for his life, then the way that dating process happens is it's almost like an interview, right? It's not superficial. He's not just looking at me going, oh yeah, she's pretty, she'll do. No, he wanted to know who I was, what I wanted, where I was going, what my desires were for the future, because he was evaluating whether or not I fit with his plan and vision. And he led that. So by the end of 3 weeks, he already knew that I ticked his key boxes and he ticked mine. But despite all of that, I still freaked out. And when I really sat with it and I dug deeper, here's what it was really about. It was about control. I was freaking out because it wasn't happening on my timeline at the pace that I expected. But that was just me wanting to be in my masculine. So it highlighted where I still had work to do. And there's nothing like a relationship and dating to highlight where your triggers are, because nothing triggers you like love and romance, because it requires your heart to be open in a completely different way than it is with your friends or your family, because you're vulnerable in a whole new way. And so your defense mechanisms start to show up in a really raw way. And as I sat with that, I realized I can't have it both ways. I can't want a man who leads and then freak out when he leads, or want him to lead my way. It doesn't work like that. Now, it doesn't mean that you just follow blindly and do whatever he wants. You can still say no. You can share how you feel and say if it doesn't feel right for you, and talk about your concerns so that together you can come up with solutions and compromises. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, you still have to decide if you're going to accept or reject his offer. You either follow his lead or you don't. And sure, I was scared because it was happening so quickly. But if I didn't want to walk away, then being in my feminine meant accepting his lead. And so if he wants to make it official, then okay, we make it official. And it's not like it was a marriage proposal, it's just a relationship. So there's no great risk. In fact, the fastest way to know if it's right or not sometimes really is just to jump in, because at least then you'll get your answer. And so far, he had proven himself to be a strong masculine lead. And the way a man leads, the way he protects and provides, that sets the stage for how the feminine responds, whether she can trust herself to feel safe with him, which, for me, I could. So there was no reason to run away. Now, I've spoken about providing in terms of a man's ability to provide clear direction and certainty for the feminine, for where they are and where they're going. But there is so much more to it than that, because providing, that can also be financial. And I know that might ruffle some feathers. So I want to clarify things, because it's really gotten confused. Because, these days, most people are so busy going off trying to prove how independent and self-sufficient they are, that they don't need anyone, that the role of provider has gotten completely lost. And something simple as going out on a date, now it's fraught with who pays the bill. And there's that awkwardness when it comes out, should a man pay, or is that sexist, or is he being disrespectful by assuming, should he show he's progressive by splitting the bill and going down the path of equality, or should a woman pay, show how progressive she is? See how it gets messy when the masculine and feminine lanes get blurred? All of these variables are introduced that shouldn't be there, and it's just confusing. So let me break it down for you. Here's why the masculine is the provider. And it's not because women aren't capable of making their own way. It's the energy behind what it means. Because when a man wants to pay, when he wants to be the masculine provider and he sees the bill come out and he says something like, I've got this. That is a boss move. Not only does he look powerful, but it makes him feel powerful too. It makes him feel like a man. So if a woman pays, or even if they split the bill, that power is immediately dissolved. He loses his masculine energy. Now, this is only relevant if he wants to pay, if he wants to be the masculine man. Because if he's only offering because he feels like he has to, honestly, from my perspective, there's no point. That leadership isn't there. Because remember, a potent masculine man is a decisive leader. So if that's not there, it just feels uncomfortable. It goes from the possibility of being, I've got this, to something that's watered down and it's more like, oh, I guess I'll get it. And that is just awkward for everyone. Honestly, men, as a feminine woman in that circumstance, I don't even want you to pay. I would rather split the bill or pay and get out of there because it doesn't feel nice. And it's not about the money per se. It's not about whether or not you pay the bill. It's the intention behind it. And you know, I get it. Money doesn't grow on trees and it's tough out there, especially these days. So of course, there might be situations where you might want to be the provider, but financially you don't have the means. And what I would say then is it doesn't have to be the nicest place that you go, but take us somewhere you can afford. And it's also not absolute. As a woman, it doesn't mean you can't ever pay, you can't ever take a man out. Because for me, I've always loved taking a partner out on surprise date nights. I really enjoy doing that for someone that I love. It just means that it's not 50-50, because then you'd be in your masculine. And letting him lead means letting him provide more than you as the feminine woman. Because here's what's happening under the surface for the feminine woman. The man who wants to pay the bill, who wants to provide, he's the one that gets my attention. Not because he has to, not because I need him to, but because of what that tells me about his character, about who he is as a person, how he shows up in his life, what his values are, how he leads. That is what I find attractive. And on top of that, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Here's what's happening at the subconscious level for a woman. And, you know, she might not even be aware of it. Because when a man gets the bill with decisiveness, it sends a message to her brain that not only has he got the bill, but he's also got her. That with him, she can feel safe. He's taking care of it, which in turn means he's taking care of her. And again, when it comes to the tango, when the man leads, he's also providing and protecting. He's providing space for her to move, knowing how to direct her body, and he's keeping her safe from being stepped on because he is the one in charge. So it comes back to the fundamentals. As a leader, he is providing and protecting. And masculine man who shows up like this, he helps her drop her walls. He's the one that helps her open up to feel safe, to be vulnerable emotionally and physically. Of course, I mean, the caveat to that is that it's assuming that as a masculine man, you actually have a feminine woman in front of you. Because naturally, you want to be discerning to make sure she's not just there for a free meal or someone looking for a sugar daddy. Because then that's a business transaction. That's not love. And women like this are typically more in their masculine energies because there's no heart in that. They're not looking for anything deeper and meaningful. But generally speaking, for the authentic masculine and feminine dynamic, there does need to be polarity for there to be a strong connection that flows. Because if you know how to lead and follow, it can be so easy. I mean, obviously you still want to make sure that you've got the right values and that you both want the same things in life. But really, once all of that is sorted and you get the energetics right, it can just flow. But like I said before, sometimes it's going to bring some baggage up with it because, like I said, for me, it brought up my fears around letting go of control. And what I want to share that I learned and realized through that process is one of the biggest ironies of life, because we have a tendency to reject what we truly desire. Because there I wanted a man who was in his masculine energy, who knew how to lead, and he was standing right in front of me. But I was scared. I was thinking about running away. And interestingly, with the tango, I mean, this is a really perfect space to see it play out, to see what our insecurities are, to see what we resist. Because what you resist in tango, you likely resist in real life. You just don't necessarily connect the dots because, you just think of it as dancing. So what it can highlight for a woman is whether she's comfortable even having a man lead, whether she's comfortable having him close, and it can help her identify whether, she's stuck in her mind, whether she's still in man mode trying to figure out the steps, or if she actually feels safe enough to drop into her body, to be in the moment and let herself flow with his guidance. If she's safe enough to let go of resistance and let herself be in the moment. And for a man, what it can highlight is if he's even confident in leading, if he can trust himself, if he knows how to take charge and take care of a woman, it all comes out on the dance floor. And so to help you navigate that, my advice for the feminine woman to help her, embrace her role is to work on surrendering control. Don't complain that he went left instead of right. Just let him lead. Allow yourself to follow and trust that he will take care of you on the way, that he'll provide the space for you to move with ease, that he'll direct your body where it needs to go so that you can do what's next, that he'll protect you and keep you safe, that he won't bump you into anyone, that he won't step on your toes, he won't force you along, that he'll support you every step of the way and guide you where to go so that you arrive there safely together, that he's also not leading blindly, that he's in tune with you so he knows what you're ready for, what you feel safe with, and takes it at a pace that you can both move forward with together. Because, in dating, of course, there were going to be some bumps along the way. And they're kind of like those growing pains, you're in that process of learning how to navigate that space together. But just let him lead. He'll figure it out. And play with how it feels to surrender. Again, it's not about following blindly. You can still share how you feel and what you are and aren't comfortable with. You're just not telling him what to do and how. Because a masculine man isn't looking for a mum. He wants a partner that will let him lead on the dance floor and in the relationship. So just trust. Trust that no matter what, you're going to be okay. You've already made it this far. So surrendering is the practice. And it's vital because he can't show up as the masculine lead in your life if you're still holding tightly to the reins. And my advice for the masculine man to fully step into that leadership, providing and protecting role, just make a decision. lead. Don't worry so much about whether she would prefer to go left or right on the dance floor, or if she would prefer to go to this restaurant or that when it comes to dating. Just pick a time, pick a place, and go with it. I guarantee you'll come across as much more attractive to the right woman, because a man who leads decisively is potent, and more potent than a guy who struggles to make a simple decision. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ask questions or be considerate. You can ask about dietary requirements or if this area is suitable, but then just choose. Don't leave it up to her to organize. Because if I'm in a situation like that, honestly, it stresses me out inside. I have no desire to live from my masculine anymore. I've been there and done it, and I've done the work to step into my feminine. And so I feel really uncomfortable being put back in that situation. But it also comes with a risk, because it makes it hard for me to know if I can trust him and his leadership, because now he's requiring me to lead. And that raises a question of whether or not he even trusts his own lead. So that's why I have no interest in competing with a guy for that position, because ultimately it takes away from me and it takes away from him, because anytime I have to make the decisions, I'm in my masculine, which requires him to be in his feminine. And honestly, I'm not interested in being the man. I would much rather stick to my lane and be firmly grounded in my feminine, because then my role is to support him to fully embody and claim and step into his masculine. And he can't do that if I keep taking on that role for him. So if I stick to my feminine place, from there, not only will he feel more like a man, but I'll end up having more respect for him and be more attracted to him. So if you stick to your lanes, to your energies and what that requires, the polarity and therefore the attraction stays intact. That's how everybody wins. It's the same reason that women prefer to dance with a strong leader who knows how to hold her, what he's doing, and he does it decisively and with confidence, over someone whose arms are flopping by his side, who doesn't know how to hold her up and, maybe keeps second guessing the next move or asking her if that's okay. And in the reverse, a man isn't going to want to dance with a woman who keeps resisting his lead and tries to make him do what she wants. He's going to feel controlled and frustrated. So he'll see her as difficult, and he'll end up choosing someone else that he can have fun with. Because when you get the energetic balances right, it shouldn't be that hard. And the way that we embody our masculine and feminine roles, that has such a ripple effect in love and in life. Because being in the masculine energy is really about the ability to lead decisively. And when a man does that with certainty and conviction, that is when he becomes a potent man, which is the source of attraction for a feminine woman, because true masculine leadership means providing and protecting. And it's providing certainty for the feminine, so she knows what's going on, what he wants, where things are going, because that helps her in turn feel safe. It helps her to let her walls down so she can trust his leadership, knowing that he has got her. And it means paying for the date. I know it might sound silly, but it has an impact, even if only at the subconscious level. Because a man who can and wants to truly provide, it says something about who he is as a person, how he shows up in life, and the way that he leads. And of course, I know that it's not easy providing, especially during hard times. But it's not absolute. It doesn't mean a woman can't do anything. It's just not a 50-50 exchange. Because for the feminine, how she shows up is in doing the work to let a man lead, to surrender her protective mechanism for control and really letting herself trust him. because you can't have two leaders in the tango. You'll just end up stepping on each other's toes and making each other frustrated. So the practice is in men learning how to lead more decisively, in trusting and backing themselves to just make a decision. And for women to let go of the reins a little bit, so there's actually space for a man to step into her life. And yes, that also means facing her baggage so she can do the internal work to be able to receive him. Because otherwise it just fizzles. You need that polarity to have that passion and fire. And if you get the masculine and feminine balance right, that is where the magic is. So that is it for part 1. It's focused more on the masculine traits and what that means for the feminine. So stay tuned for the next episode where I'll go through part 2 and take a deeper look at the feminine and what it means for her ability to receive, to be vulnerable, and how that impacts the masculine and their ability to connect on a deeper heart level, because this is what brings depth to the relationship. So stay tuned.